Euro 2024 doesn't kick off until what, mid-June, but we had the draw, Mark, Ogden. So let's draw some very early conclusions, bearing in mind that there's 3 slots that haven't even been allocated yet. There's a lot of teams that I think are in turmoil, and one of them is the host. So let's get right into Group A, host nation Germany. They're in the group with Scotland, Hungary, and Switzerland. I think the group's been a little bit kind to them, but man, if you're Julian Nagelsmann, you look around and you say, all right, I got to roll up my sleeves here.
I'll tell you what, no, seriously, Gab, I look at this group and I think that, if Germany are on form, I think they'll sail through it, but they're not on form. They've lost 5 of the last 8 games, and each of those games is a very difficult game. I mean, Scotland in the opening game, that is a real test of Germany's, ability to go into this tournament with confidence. And, Scotland have beat Spain in the qualifiers. They've got, people like John McGinn, Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney, who can be a threat. Hungary, as we know, in the Euros, they held Germany to a draw in Munich. I think it was 2-2. Dominic Szoboszlai's having a great time at Liverpool. And Switzerland are a team that always, would get out of the group at tournaments. So this could be a very awkward group for Germany if they don't start well. So it looks like a simple group on paper, but I think it's quite a tough one. And I think, you go beyond that, you look who they could hit in the quarterfinals. If they go beyond the group, then it doesn't look good for Germany.
All right, let's not worry about the quarterfinals yet, because this is one of those, this is the other thing to remember about this tournament. This is one of those tournaments where, because it's a weird number, it's 24 countries in 6 groups. So you're going to have all these third place finishers coming in. You're going to have weird dynamics. But I agree with you, actually, despite what I said a minute earlier. This is no gimme. Hungary, I mean, I think we saw in the Nations League what they can do. I think they beat England, too, if memory serves. Switzerland, all they did in the last tournament was, knock out France in the round of 16 at the Euros. And they can certainly be a very tricky side. And, yeah, Scotland, I don't think anybody expected them to have the qualifying campaign that they had. So I think when I look at this Germany side, it seems to me that the big question is, what can Nagelsmann deliver when, he's never coached at national team level. He's a guy who's known for his sophisticated tactics, but you don't necessarily have the time to implement that. And man, this team, to me, Augie, still feels like there's a lot of talent in certain areas of the pitch, and in other areas, the cupboard is pretty bare. And
well, I mean, where the goals will come from? Who's going to score the goals? I mean,
Oliver Fulkrug, man.
Yeah, he did do it in the World Cup, didn't he? I think I was at the game when they threw him against Costa Rica, and it didn't really work out for him then. So I'm not sure it's going to work out this time. But I mean, one thing for me that I think might be that we kind of overlooked a little bit is that this is the first tournament that we're going to have, well, for probably since Russia 2018, where you feel like you've got a lot of fans, and it's a real kind of fan tournament, because the Euros last time out was the COVID Euros, and Qatar 2022 was a strange tournament in terms of certainly in European fans. So I think we're getting back to a situation where there's going to be a lot of fans turn out, a lot of fans travelling, and that could be significant in Group A, because we keep hearing about the so-called Tartan Army, the greatest supporters in the world. Well, there are going to be a lot of Scotland fans going to turn up in Germany. The Swiss will be there in numbers. The Hungarians will just come over the border. So that could be significant in this group, in the sense that Germany will have to come up against teams that will have a big, strong following in the games that they're playing.
I very much agree with you. It's a great point. We saw that, of course, in 2006, the last time Germany hosted a major event in the World Cup. Let's move on to Group B, which I think is arguably one of the 2 toughest groups in the tournament. Spain, Croatia, Italy, and Albania. Now, I don't know if you're a big FIFA rankings guy, Mark, but Spain, Croatia, and Italy are all in the top 10 of the FIFA rankings.
I don't know Italy there, but I'll take your word on that. Look, I mean, I saw Italy against
the defending champions. They reached the Nations League Final Four twice. In the last
it was 3 years. They didn't qualify for the World Cup or the one before that. So let's kind of balance it out a little bit. I saw Italy against Ukraine in the playoff game in Leverkusen, when, let's be honest, Ukraine should have had a penalty in the 93rd minute, and then Italy might be in the qualifiers. Italy aren't a good team. They're not a good team. They're not the Italian team that we would expect to see. Spain, I think, will win this group quite easily. Croatia, you don't know what you're going to get. And then also you've got Albania, that they were there in Euro 2016. So, but they qualified quite easily, Albania. So this could be a real surprise behind Spain. I just don't know what Italy we're going to get. Are we going to get the Italian side that won the Euros? Or are we going to get the Italian side that hasn't won a game at the World Cup since 2006? You know,
Okay, it
2010.
was just 2006. 2006 isn't relevant. None of those people are still playing. Well, actually,
No, but they haven't won the World Cup in 2010. They were awful. They didn't qualify in 2018. They had a bad time in 2014. They didn't qualify in 2022. So,
no, but
which is we're going to see.
Stuck on this, but this is like if you watched that Ukraine game, then you
I was
also
there.
saw good. Then if you were paying attention and you didn't just wake up for that penalty incident at the end, and I thought it should have been a penalty, and yes, they would have been in the playoffs. You saw Italy create, I think, a lot of chances and probably could have been 2 or 3 goals to the good. I think the fact is they've played very well during qualifying. I don't think they match up well with Spain at all because they try to dominate the midfield, and Spain are just much better at that. And whereas Spain have found their goal scorer in Alvaro Morata, who's having a tremendous season with Atletico Madrid, Italy simply don't have one. And I think on the attacking end, they'll be heavily reliant on Federico Chiesa. And that is a really, really big ask given his injuries. As for Croatia, you know, we need to see the Josko Gvardiol of the World Cup if they are to advance, not the one that we've seen at times with City this season. I love the Modric story. I have no idea, a guy like Marcelo Brozovic, I have no idea what level he's playing at in Saudi right now, just because we don't get to see him every week. But it would be cool, right? They get the gang back together, Brozovic, Domagoj Vida, Ivan Perisic, and of course Modric for one last score. I mean, that's a story, right?
Absolutely, and they are probably the best tournament team in the last decade because they always do really well at tournaments, and they have got that ability. And I think we can't forget as well that 3 teams can get out of this group, so you could have Spain, Croatia, and Italy coming through. It's not a top 2 scenario, but you know, it's an intriguing group because we don't know what Albania are going to give us either. I'm sure they'll be well supported and they'll spring a surprise. But I agree. I mean, you said it's one of the 2 toughest groups. I think it is the toughest group. I think this is tougher than Group D. So
I was thinking, you know, Spain losing Gavi obviously is a big blow, but then you look at it, they do have a really, really deep midfield. And if Pedri gets to the World Cup in good shape, I think Rodri is the outstanding central midfielder in Europe right now. And you know, they got all these other guys who can pass, like Mika Merino or Fabian Ruiz or whatever. They're in good shape. I'll tell you this about Albania. I have a soft spot for Silvinho and Pablo Zabaleta, who were drafted in to lead this team. I think Albania are going to live or die by what they get up front. And I think in Asani, who obviously plays in Korea, and you know, he's kind of a cult hero in the making in some ways. And if they get fit Armando Broja back, that's what they're going to need. Otherwise they're finishing bottom. Moving on to
let me throw it to you. Group C. You know, England are in Group C, and I think every tournament comes around. As an Englishman, I kind of get sick of the whole noise about England. This is their time. This is their time. I mean, really, in the past when that's been said, it hasn't really been their time. But you think now they've got Bellingham, they've got Kane, they've got Saka, they've got Foden, Stones, half the Man City team. This group as well is almost like tailor-made for England to basically come out of the group with 9 points. And again, you know, the juggernaut will start about the hype. But I do think England have got a great chance this time.
So you don't seem to have a lot of faith in Serbia, Denmark, and Slovenia. I think England's record speaks for itself. This is a really, really good team. I think what can undo them is, as we love to say on the Gavin Jules show, that Gareth Southgate is a better person than he is a football coach, in my opinion. I do wonder in certain key positions, though, is the depth there? You know, it's great to talk about John Stones, and sure, if your defensive partnership is a viable one, but once you get into, you know, you're a couple injuries and suspensions away from, you know, Maguire, Mark Gay, Maguire might even start actually, you know, Mark Gahey, Tomori, who are perhaps untested at this level. So I think that is maybe one of the bigger question marks for England. But you're right. I would agree that they're heavy favorites. Well, what do you make of Denmark? One last tune out of Christian Eriksen and young Rasmus.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm not sure. I mean, again, it is all kind of altered by the fact that 3 teams can come out of the group. I think Serbia are the team that will finish second in this group. I just think, you've got Mitrovic who scores goals. You've got Vlahovic. I think he's a good player. I think Tadic as well. I think they've got the ability to be the best of the rest. I saw Slovenia actually in San Marino recently, and they weren't particularly great. I know they've got Benjamin Sesko, who could be a star this tournament, but I think Serbia are the team that are most likely to come out in second place. But but like I said, Denmark are they're very organised and they're very good at doing what they have to do. So I do think they could quite easily finish second if Eriksson and Højlund and the rest of them, Sami Kjær can perform. But I just like the talent, the quality of the Serbian team in certain places.
All right, let's move on to Group D, where we have France, Austria, Holland, and the winner of playoff track A, which is going to be one of Poland, Wales, Estonia, and Finland. Again, we don't know who it's going to be. Let's just deal with the playoff bit first. Just knock this out of the way. Logic, pedigree would suggest Poland because they have Lewandowski and Zelensky, that they would be the biggest threat. But I'll tell you what, I mean, Wales were in a tough group with Croatia and Turkey. They would have qualified directly if they'd gotten the job done against Armenia. I'm assuming we got to go with Poland as a fourth team, right? Because we'd be mad not to.
Yeah, I think so. But if Wales have got both games at home, if they win the semi-final against Finland, they play the final against Poland likely in Cardiff. So home advantage in Cardiff is a big thing for Wales. So, but I just wonder whether they've got the goals without Gareth Bale. Can they beat Poland? But I do think that the Cardiff element is a big thing. But I do think it'll be Wales or Poland. And looking at the group, I'm just looking at it now. I think Poland would make it a much more competitive group. So I'd imagine that Lewandowski might just carry Poland through. But like I say, I think the fact it's in Cardiff, if they get there, balances it out.
Yeah, and whoever goes through, I think, and I'll go on and say this, are probably likely to finish bottom. And the reason I say this is that, like, France are obviously next level. Holland have had a really tricky qualifying campaign. It's much worse than it really should have been. But they have a couple of things playing in their favor. One is, and we'll get to France in a minute, but I just want to say why I actually think Holland could be good and why I think Austria could actually be good and why I think this is, the other really tough group here. When everybody's fit for Holland. Now, if Jules were here, he'd tell me that Ronald Koeman's rubbish and whatever. But since he's not here, if everybody's fit, you could have a back four of Denzel Dumfries, Van Dijk, Botman, or De Ligt, and Jurrien Timber. And I'm thinking to myself, that's really, really good. The midfield, you've got, you have Frankie de Jong, Tijani Reinders, Koopmeiners. That's really good too. Now you have some questions up front, where other than Xavi Simons, depending on how they choose to use them, it's Gakpo, it's Weghorst, maybe not on the same level. And obviously in goal, where they've had 4 different goalkeepers during qualifying. Looks like Verbruggen is the job now, but he doesn't even start for Brighton. But if they get some momentum, there is a lot of talent in this Dutch side. Is it enough to stop France? I'm not sure, but I think Holland, if they learn their lessons from the 2 times that they faced France and lost, they can make life difficult for them. And also Austria. I know Ralph Rangnick is a figure of fun where you live up in Manchester, but they had a good qualifying run, and I'll just be fascinated to see what he comes up with. They have a lot of very gifted midfielders who work hard, from Zeeval, Sabitzer, all these guys, by the way, are obviously Red Bull alumni. I think Austria can, and it's the opening game for France. And I don't know. Am I being too optimistic here?
No, I mean, I think Austria more likely to be. I mean, nobody's a threat to France in this group. But I think in terms of second spot, I think Austria more likely to get it than the Dutch. I think the Dutch are just overrated. I tell what you're saying about the quality they've got in defensive midfield, but they haven't got a goal scorer. And Weghorst shouldn't be anywhere near an international team, but he is because Holland haven't got a goal scorer. Now they had a soft run to the quarterfinals. Sorry, the semi-finals. I forget now. They had a soft run to the quarterfinals in Qatar, lost to Argentina. But, they came out of a soft group. They beat the USA. I don't think the Dutch are that great. And I think when they come up against an organised team, a good team, that they won't progress. And I think, what happens depends on who the full team is, doesn't it? If it's Poland, then you'd fancy Poland to get a result against the Dutch. So, but it's the Dutch in Germany. They won it in '88 and they got to the final in '74. So maybe they enjoy playing in Germany.
I love the fact that you think all these historical references are in any way relevant. They're not. People, makes no difference.
I don't know. Sometimes, you'll start talking about the Dortmund semi-final in 2006 soon, won't you?
No, I haven't actually brought that up. All right, but we haven't spoken about France at all. I mean, I think we both have them as the best team in Europe, maybe the best team in the world right now. The more I look at this, and obviously France's B team would probably be strong contenders to get to the quarterfinals, if not better. But I look at this and I say they have everything and they're battle hardened and they have the experience. And, I think Didier Deschamps, who I'm not a big fan of, but I got to tip my hat to him. He's reached 2 World Cup finals. He's reached a Euro final. I think the way France get knocked out is if they beat themselves. And the way they beat themselves is if there's controversy in the side, as happened at the Euros, of course, when they were knocked out in the round of 16 by Switzerland. Or when you've got so much choice, sometimes you can make the wrong choices, pick the wrong people in the lineup, make other big names upset. Do you have any sense that could happen here?
No, I just don't. I just think that Deschamps been doing it for too long. I think they've just got so much depth and quality in all positions. And they've got Mbappe, the best player at the tournament, one of the best players in the world. So you're right. The only team that can beat France, I think, are themselves. I think England are quite close. I think Portugal are quite close. But I think France are on a different level. And I think they'll come through this group quite easily. They are the team to beat. They really are. I mean, they're probably they could be as dominant as the Spain team were 10, 15 years ago because they are that good and they have got much depth. And it's just, Didier Deschamps, you're right, he's not one of the great coaches, but he's a great international coach. So they've got everything they need in their favour. I don't see any negative with France. I really don't. The only negative I can see, and it's not much of one, is that if they get to the semi-finals, they'll probably play England rather than the final. But still, I think France can win that anyway.
I needed to shoehorn England in there somewhere. Let's move on to Group E: Belgium, Slovakia, Romania, and the playoff winner from Pathway B. Once again, let's knock this out. Bosnia and Herzegovina against Ukraine, and Israel against Iceland. I'll tell you what, this is pretty balanced here. Ukraine and Israel, on paper, Ukraine would have the home game in the final, although obviously they don't play at home; they play in Germany because of the situation. Who knows? We pray that situation is calmed down by March and some normality is returned, and you could say the same point about Israel.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is a kind of a path that we talk about the nations for the wrong reasons, doesn't it? It's not really a football path, but Bosnia have had a terrible time under. Well, beyond, I mean, Savo Milosevic is the manager now, and he's had a bad run. He got hammered by Portugal recently. Their form is abysmal. So had they ended up in the playoffs, very, very fortunate. Obviously, it's something to do with the Nations League, but also you've got, Iceland. They seem to have declined a lot since 2016. I'm not sure they'll be much of a threat. For me, I think Ukraine. I think Israel are a bright team, but I think Ukraine have got a bit of experience in terms of top level leagues in Europe. I think they're the best team in this path, and they've got a real reason to get that. I suppose Israel have as well, but I think Ukraine have got a real sense of purpose, and I saw that when I saw them play Italy. There's a real kind of togetherness, and they have got some very good players. So I think Ukraine come out of this group.
Okay, you seem to have a lot of faith there in Ukraine, but I would agree with you that they are favorites. So Belgium, I think this is an interesting group because on paper, people might say this is possibly the weakest group. So you're going to tell me that you would probably have Ukraine, if they qualify, advancing out of the group as well, right? Maybe close to Belgium.
Yeah.
So we don't know what Kevin De Bruyne, we hope he's going to be fit, but we don't know. But Belgium are clear favorites, though, to actually win the group, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at the Belgium team, you're right. I mean, you've got De Bruyne, you've got Courtois, who should both be fit for the finals. Lukaku's still scoring goals. You've got Tielemans. You've got Doku at Man City. Belgium should absolutely coast this group. But you're right. If Ukraine do make it, I'd expect them to finish second because, it's great to see Romania back at a major tournament again. I think, we know that over the years they've produced some great players, but I'm not quite sure.
They have the sons of great players playing for them, right?
We do, yeah, Hadj is there still. I just think you look at the Romanian squad. There's not a lot of players that play in the top leagues in Europe, so they've either been not scouted very well over the years, or they're not quite good enough. So we'll see with Romania what they generate. In Slovakia, they qualify for tournaments, don't really do anything, come and go without making an impact. So this group might be the weakest group. It's also the dullest group as well, because let's be honest, there's not many games in this group you'd be crying out to see, because I think Belgium are going to walk it.
Moving on to Group F, let's talk playoff path here. It's Georgia.
This is a big one, this pot C.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's Georgia against Luxembourg and Greece against Kazakhstan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's be a little bit fair here. Greece were in a very, very tough qualifying group, right? Georgia have Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, which I don't want to say he's the most exciting player in the tournament, but he's certainly in my top 5 who I would want to watch. Luxembourg took points off a whole bunch of countries, and they're the perennial whipping boys. And then there's Kazakhstan. So I'm guessing Georgia are favorites to advance. Or would you go with that? Also, because they're going to be home against Greece or Kazakhstan in the final.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Kvaratskhelia is the star player. I do like the idea of a Cinderella team coming out of this group. But, the fact, I mean, Greece maybe less so, but obviously Greece surprised us all back in the 2004. But I can't really call it. I think Luxembourg are the minnows. I'd love to see Kazakhstan qualify just for the storyline. But yeah, I think Georgia, if they can hold the nerve, that's the thing for me. Can they, if they've got a chance of qualifying for the finals, can they do it? And have Greece got a little bit more street smart about them? Don't know, but it's a tough one to call. I mean, I've not seen a lot of Greece or Kazakhstan lately, so I'll say Georgia.
All right, so Portugal are the outright favorites in the group, right? I would have you committed if you said otherwise. Now, what I find really interesting is when we last saw Cristiano in a major tournament, obviously he was dropped by Fernando Santos, given that cameo at the end. And, when he was dropped, even a lot of public opinion in Portugal were like, yeah, it's time to move on from him. And there was even the question about whether the new coach, Roberto Martinez, would keep him in the national side. And yet he did. And he ended up as the second leading goal scorer in qualifying. And yeah, he scored his goals against Liechtenstein and Bosnia and whatnot, but he still scored them. He's averaging about a goal a game for Al Nassr in the Saudi league. The big question to me is, from a purely football tactical balance perspective, we don't know if Roberto's going to start him, but I think the fact that he brought him back into the national team means that he'll be there. And that means he's going to have to at least give Cristiano a chance, right? You can't just take Cristiano to the tournament and be like, hey, you be Mr. Super Sub, right?
No, I agree, but he's managed it well so far. And I was surprised. I thought it was a great opportunity for Portugal and for Martinez to make a clean break after the World Cup and say, right, Cristiano, you're 38, 39, now it's time to move on. But he didn't do that. And, Ronaldo has delivered, like you say, albeit against weaker opposition, but he's still there. He's still a guy that can score a goal. So, for me, Portugal are. I can't put kind of a cigarette paper between them.
One more time. It's Ronaldo has delivered, and then it froze.
Yeah, okay.
They've been doing stuff with the Wi-Fi in the building. It's so annoying, but we're nearly there.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Really well. So Ronaldo has delivered for Portugal in the qualifiers. It's not like he's just suddenly dropped off a cliff. He has played well and scored goals. So I think that Portugal for me are on a par with England as the second favourites. I think France are the favourites, but I think people are overlooking Portugal quite a lot, really. You look at the squad they've got. Ruben Dias, Bernardo Silva, Diogo Jota. They've got Bruno Fernandes, Ronaldo. They've got a very good team. Gonçalo Ramos. I think Portugal can go a long way in this tournament. Could actually win it, and I think that they've got a group that's kind of. It's tough enough to make them kind of to toughen up for the knockout stages. Turkey will give them a game. So the Czechs, you never know. So I think Portugal are in a good section. I think they'll top the group, but I do think that, team to watch.
Yeah, there's one of those stats that always fascinates me is Turkey's perpetual underachievement in major tournaments. So, apart from their 2 semifinal runs at the Euros and at the World Cup, and I think there was another instance where they reached the quarterfinals. Other than that, they've never gotten past the group stage. And when you consider that this is a top 7 or 8 league in Europe, when you consider it's 100 million people, when you consider a football man, the country is pretty remarkable. And again, Turkey seemed to make life difficult for themselves. Obviously, it was a really bumpy run in qualifying. They ended up sacking Stefan Kuntz and replacing him with Vincenzo Montella just in September. But Augie, there's a lot of talent there. There's some young talent which might not be ready yet in the two 18-year-olds, Arda Güler and Kenan Yildiz. You've got a guy like Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who I think showed at Inter with the kind of season they had, that he can be a leader. I think they're nailed on for second place behind Portugal. Although if there is an upset, this is the trap game for Portugal. Czech Republic, I'm not so big on, simply because of the chaos this team has been in, with Silhavi, resigning after qualifying them. They don't have a coach right now. I mean, obviously they will have one probably in the next weeks, but this is a team that does a lot of harm to itself. That did a lot of harm to itself, of course, with the 3 guys who decided to go out clubbing and break team rules just the day before, or 36 hours before a crucial qualifier. I just think it's obvious, even though I don't think he came out and said it, this is linked to Silhavi's removal. And whoever comes to Group C, I think it's an opportunity for them, because I think the Czechs are really, really down now. And because Turkey, and also to a lesser degree Portugal, can be inconsistent. But yeah, for me, you said it's Portugal and Turkey, and then the other 2 will have to battle it out for 3rd place and hope that that's enough to get you into the next round.
I think you're right about Turkey as well. I think another significant factor as well, which again people outside of Germany might not factor in, is the fact that there's a massive Turkish population in Germany, which they will treat this like a home tournament. They'll have massive support wherever they play, so that will also play in their favour. So I think that Turkey, can be. We always talk about a surprise team in a tournament. I think it could be Turkey, because I think they can go deep in this tournament by getting out of the group as runners up to Portugal.
All right, we were taping this a couple hours after the draw, so tournament doesn't kick off until June, so don't hold us to it. But I'm psyched. I'm ready for another big summer tournament.